Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jim Nowakowski at Interline Creative Group. We're so happy you're in the audience. As the room fills up, take a moment to think about it. Some of you did respond to my email earlier. If you registered in time to ask me some questions, which we'll get to throughout the course. And secondly, if you're going to take notes, take copious notes, because I will answer questions throughout the presentation. Thank you so much for attending, and stay tuned. Okay, let's get rolling. It's about a minute to 10 o'clock. As a few stragglers start coming into the room, I want to welcome everyone to delighting customers with your website. This is Interline, a proven course that we've updated because of COVID and all that stuff, but this is registered for the AIA. I know I have architects in the audience, so if you need help with your administration, let us know. And this is also covered by the NKBA. We have designers and showrooms in the audience as well as professional firms, outside the industry. So I'd like to take a moment to welcome everybody. The presentation is copyright. You can take screenshots, you can write notes, or you can email me afterwards. I'll send you a PDF file of the slides if you're interested. We like to copyright it simply because it's our content and our intellectual property, but we like to share it. That's why we're doing that. It's sponsored by KB Resource, which is an interesting website. We'll talk about that later. So, here's the situation, ladies and gentlemen. Knowing how to navigate your business is a daunting task, isn't it? With so many channels available, business website is the only seems to be an afterthought or a component of your marketing mix, and I'm here to change that. I am standing in front of you. To tell you that the single most important marketing tactic in your arsenal is your website. It has always been your website, and anybody that tells you it's not your website, frankly, is not telling you the truth. And I'm going to prove that to you today, and I'm going to talk about how to use your website in different ways, perhaps, to delight your customers. I noticed many people in the audience have Gmails. It's either because you don't want me to see your website or whatever. Some of you registered with your website, and I did take a look at some of the people in the audience. If I had a chance to do that. If I didn't have a chance to do that, we could do that after the course. The learning objectives for this course are to define today's consumer and who are your consumers, and that should be customers as well. Because we're all consumers, but architects have clients, and designers have clients, and showrooms have customers, etc., etc., etc. But as Sister Dorothea taught me, who is your audience? Then we want to talk a little bit about determining your value proposition and how you find your value. Value is very important, which COVID seems to have destroyed. Isn't that right, ladies and gentlemen? But we're going to show you how to uncover what your value is and turn that into differentiation, which is really the key to the puzzle. Differentiation is the key to the puzzle. In the world of Google, it's very hard to differentiate, isn't it? And then we'll talk about some integrated marketing drivers that help drive people to your website. So if you have questions, please put them in the question box. Again, this is AIA NKBA endorsed. You'll get credit for it. So your website is the most important, tactic in your marketing arsenal because you use it to introduce yourself. People make judgments on you based on what Google shows them about your website or if they come to your website. And that judgment, ladies and gentlemen, takes place just like judgments took place when you met people. If you remember before COVID, and now that we're breaking out of COVID, whenever you see a person, you judge a person in nanoseconds, perhaps rightly, perhaps incorrectly. But you make these value judgments. It's the same thing on your website. When people hit your website, they make a judgment. Right or wrong, they're making a judgment about you. They're judging your service, how you get to market. So all of these questions that you see on the screen in front of you are very important because once you build your website, you architects, you designers, you showrooms, you professional companies. I have insurance companies in the audience today. Once you build your website, or are you working with an already built website, you have to really realize that people are judging you on that website, which we're going to talk about. And you don't want them to judge you like this. There was a movie in the 50s called Them. It was about giant ants because of radiation. Interesting movie. James Whitmore was in it, James Arness, Matt Dillon. This is dating me, but if you get a chance to that, you don't want to be thought of as, here comes that guy again. Oh, why are they calling me again? Or, oh my God, look at this website. Oh my God, look at this website. So when I'm saying to you about your value proposition, for example, in total transparency, people have told me in the last week, as I prepared for this webinar again, that our website, interlinegroup.com, is too busy. It's got too much. People want tidbits. They want nuggets. Well, that can be debated, and we can talk about that, but I can tell you, and I'm going to demonstrate to you, that our website has great SEO. It has great SEO because it has a lot of pages, and that's one of the things you want to write down on your notepad right now. You need content. We're going to talk a lot about content. And partly, if you have a lot of content, you immediately start differentiating yourself from other people. Think about this. Think about this. 70% of the people who are looking for what you sell, whether it's a service, a product, whatever, doesn't really matter. 70% of the people who are looking for what you sell go to Google first. You don't have to believe me. You can just Google that question. Where do people go when they're looking for things? They go to Google. Google owns the search market, right? And 70% of the links that search users click on, people who go, and test this on yourself. Test this on yourself. Ask yourself, when you go and you search Google, do you look at the ads or do you go to the organic results below the ads? Because Google is the richest ad agency in the world. They make money buying AdWords. We buy AdWords for our clients. We do. Because our clients want AdWords, and that's great. But you beat Google with organic search results. People don't want to read advertising. When's the last time you looked at a television commercial? You DVR it and you blast through the commercials. Whenever you watch a program, unless you're very interested in the commercial, you're not going to watch. Nobody reads ads anymore. There's ad blockers. So what you want to do with your website is you want to have lots of content because that's what people click on. And especially you want to be on page 1 of these search results. We're going to talk about all this today. Now, if you think 70% was high, I'm going to show you in a minute what COVID-19 did to that. It blew it through the roof. The main point here is, remember, your website has to be on page 1 when people search Google. This is not an easy task. However, it is not an impossible task, as I will show you and prove to you. By the way, you know what a sidebar is? It's when the court, and you're a lawyer in the court, and the judge calls you for a sidebar, or you ask for a sidebar. So I'm going to ask you for a sidebar now. I'll call you closer to the screen. By the way, Did you know that in 2020, U.S. adults spent almost 8 hours a day, 8 hours a day, consuming digital media, which is 15% more than they did in 2019. And if I ask you in this sidebar what caused that, you're going to say COVID, right? Of course you did. Look at the statistics on the right, Netflix, YouTube, etc., right? People were consuming digital data. The blog on the left is How Much Data Can You Eat, which I wrote many years ago, which is still true today. People want data. They want more data, and then when you give them a lot of data, they still want more. The thirst for data, as I talk about in this blog, is insatiable. It's insatiable. You cannot satisfy it. And if you think what it is today with COVID-19 effects, it's only going to get worse. People are now digital. Period. They've learned to work from home. They've learned to work on the road. They've already been using their mobile phone. All young people, millennials, Gen Zers, all of those people were born into the age of the internet, grew up with a phone in their hand, unlike older people like me, but you either adapt, change, or you disappear, right? You don't want to disappear, so you have to adapt. Take a look at this statistic I just pulled up for this webinar today. This is every minute of every day. I'm not going to leave it on here long, but you can find this in Domo, D-O-M-O. That's the people who track this and produce beautiful graphics like this. Every minute of every day, this is going on. Every minute, ladies and gentlemen. This is not the accumulation of a month. This is every minute. So when I tell you you want to be on page 1, this is what you're up against. When I tell you you have to have great SEO, this is what you're up against. You are up against everything else. You think you compete with other architects or other designers or other showrooms or other manufacturers, right? Most manufacturers think they compete with only other manufacturers who make the same thing they do. You couldn't be more wrong. You're competing with everyone for everyone's time and attention, and that's why your website is so important. For example, I'm going to give you a trick now on how to measure these things in terms of metrics. If you Google plumbing showrooms in Chicago, you see the ads on the left, right? Google will always serve you ads first, and then you see the organic searches on the right. This is all one big page, but I put it up here for your visual digestion. The ones you see in the boxes below the map are the local ones, because I live in the Palatine, I work in Palatine, live in Cary in the Chicago area. Google is conveniently giving me local people, which somebody's making money to do this. Google is not doing this because they love you. Google is doing this because someone's paying them to do this, especially the ads. But if you look at the right, you're going to see organic searches. So Crawford Supply will actually come up in an organic search, and that's what you want to study. When you go forward after this webinar as an architect, a designer, a showroom, a manufacturer, an insurance company, a university student, I've got university students in this audience. If you go forward and start your investigations and studies, watch the organic results of any search you put in Google and then ask yourself a simple question. How did they get there? And then explore their content, because I'm going to tell you right now the answer to that question is they got on page 1 because of the content relates to what the person was searching. This is a two-step dance. Whatever people put in that search bar, you have to have a relationship on your website with those words, because those words are being paid for by Ferguson, Studio 41, etc. All right? If you look at the organic searches, we have Studio 41 3 times, House, Kohler Signature, and we're going to look at that in a moment. Those are the people who are doing something on their website to bring them up to page 1 without paying Google. I love Google. I use Google. I buy Google AdWords for my client. I do not buy Google AdWords for myself. Google is rich enough without me, Jim Nowakowski and Interline Group paying Google any money. And we love Google. I took a class yesterday on Google and learned an enormous amount of things on how they actually give you results based on what you're spending for your clients compared to competitors without violating privacy. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this. So if I look at Yelp and I look at their website and why they came up when I searched for plumbing showrooms in Chicago, That's because Yelp is an entity in itself. It's a channel in itself, and it brings up showrooms in Chicago. Of course they're going to come up on a page one organic search, right? But I don't use Yelp. I know some consumers who do use Yelp. I know some consumers who don't use Yelp. Yelp is not the issue. The issue is getting on page one in a Google search. That is the issue. So now I'm going to show you something I want you to write this down. For any website in the world, including yours, including any of your competitors, if you type in the search bar site, S-I-T-E, and then put in the website address, you will in fact see the number of pages on that website. So if you type in site, Yelp, as I show in the upper right-hand corner, Yelp has 119 million pages. Should I stop for a moment and have you digest that? That's a lot of pages. That's a lot of pages. By the way, as you're going to see in a moment, it's not the most pages, but that's a lot of pages. And when you have a lot of pages like that, you are inevitably on page one. And I am not by any means suggesting to you that you must go out and create 119 million pages. That would be not only foolish, it's stupid. All right? But that doesn't give Yelp the currency on being page one except for the number of pages. If you use Yelp, you go to Yelp, but who believes Yelp these days? Who believes anybody these days? So as we look at this and we think about the site address, let's go to another Crawford Supply. Crawford Supply was another organic search that appeared on page one. How many pages did they have? So if you type in site, right, and you put in Crawford Supply, you'll find out that they had 550 pages. That's a lot of pages for one showroom. But if you examine their site, if you investigate their site, if you map their site, and you look at their site and compare it to your site, which we'll do in a moment, you're going to see that these 500 pages contain a lot of those words. Plumbing showrooms in Chicago, that's why they're on page one, and so on. If you look at Ferguson, who is the largest distributor in the world, great company, by the way, right? And they're on page one. They're on page one because they have 353,000 pages. Not as much as Yelp, but certainly enough to make a presence. These are the other people that were on page one. Look at House. House has 7.5 million pages. That's a lot of pages, isn't it? Studio 41 has 18,000. Kohler has 82,000. And Kohler's signature store in Chicago, because it's GPS driven, geographically driven, right? It has one result. But it's on page one because I was looking from Chicago. These are all factors, and you're going to say, Jim, I thought we were here to delight our customers with our website. We are, and we're going to talk about that. But before we can delight our customers, they have to find us. They have to find us. And if 70% of the people are looking for us through Google and you're not on page one, they will not find you even if you have the best website in the world. You understand? So the key is SEO. The keys to delighting your customers is being found and then delighting them. You won't have a chance to delight them unless you're found. And it's not just pictures. As you'll see from some of those websites you examine, pictures are great, but guess what? I'm going to give you another secret. Google can't see pictures. You understand what I'm saying? It's like the Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger when he puts mud on himself and the alien can't see him. Pictures are mud to Google. You have to caption your pictures. You have to put content around your pictures, behind your pictures. It's not just pictures. It's the content that Google Spiders algorithms read. It's the words. Because you don't place a picture in a search bar. Although when you search bar, there's a little tag called images if you want to see pictures. They make it very easy. But when you are searching for content, you type in words. And remember that. Words are what Google looks for. The other secret to SEO is linking. You want to link within your own website to things. You want to link to outside your things. You want to get people to link to you. Google loves linking because it drives up your presence when they're starting to search things. And I'm going to prove this to you. If you Google conversation from hell, yours truly is number one. I've been number one since 2013 when I posted this blog. I called it Conversation from Hell. I now own those words. Not that you would buy any ads around those words, not that anybody would care about those words, right? No one gives a hell about those words except me. And I did this in the early investigations in 2013 into SEO. I said to myself, why the heck would Google put me number one? And then I realized the headline's very important, right? When publishers, I'm talking about major publishers of companies, I would show them this in 2013, 2014, they would ask me, in all seriousness, Jim, how much are you paying Google for that? And I would happily reply, I can't tell you, but it's enormous because, as you know, Google's, they get their money from advertising, but I can't divulge it. I swore a confidentiality agreement. I didn't pay a dime. I'm not paying a dime. But the publisher didn't know that, and he should have known that. What I'm suggesting to you is what I'm giving you are some of the secrets of website discovery in order to delight your customers. That's what I'm talking about. This blog was very well read. It's a conversation with a rep who was trying to sell me something. Okay. We also are on pricing is a big thing with everyone in the audience. Should I lower my price? What is the price I should sell? Pricing is one of the top 5 things people buy about, when they're purchasing something. Price is always a consideration. So I wrote a blog, right? Never lower your price in 2019. That was the title of my blog. Always increase your value, which is what we're talking about. I am now on number 1 page below the coveted Google box. You see the Google box? Never lower your price, offers less. Those people are in the coveted Google box. When Google puts you in that box, you don't pay for it. Google puts you there because people are clicking on your link. Well, look who's right below there in the organic search. It's us. I'm showing you these personal examples because in our investigation, it's important that you too can do this. All this is it's a story, because we love stories, people love stories, about why you should never lower your price. Okay? Your value proposition, your value, is what your customers perceive to be the value. You think you have value, and that's great, you probably do, otherwise you wouldn't be in the audience. But your value comes from what your customers tell you it is. Your customer's perception of you is your brand. It's not what you think it is, it's what they think it is. It's never about you, it's about them. So your value is why customers want to do business with you. I would ask everyone in the audience, but you can't answer all at the same time, nor should you put the answer in your question box. What do you think your customers why do they value you? And how has that changed because of COVID? And what do you think the value of post-COVID will be? What is your value? These are difficult questions. You cannot expect to answer them today. I don't want you to answer them today. We'd never leave the room. But you have to begin exploring these. You have to ask yourself, but don't ask just yourself. Go to your customers and research your customers. Ask them. Do a quick survey of them. Do a quick panel discussion every time you're on the phone. Why do you do business with me? I'm always asking that question to the point where people say, would you just stop asking and get the job done? I'm kidding. Here's a good example. Air has no value, right? It has no value. I wanted to say, replace this slide with freedom has no value after the COVID lockdowns, but I left air. We take this for granted. We take it for granted. But if you couldn't get air, how much would you pay somebody to get the air? If if I had a way to suck the air out of your room, how much would you give me to put the air back and have you breathe? So it has no value until it does. You don't want to become a commodity. But here's the bad news. Everyone today, until you differentiate, is a commodity. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been in the business 31 years. I am absolutely in the toughest environment I have ever been in. And, I'm a small company, imagine, right? Who made it well in COVID? The bigger companies. Amazon made a fortune, right? Because they're bigger. Target made fortunes because they're big. Big companies made it because they're big. Size matters. Smaller companies are different. You have to differentiate, otherwise you get passed by. And then you have to really talk about the value. Is it the transaction or the value? That's another story. Who are you? What makes you unique? What are you doing today that your competitor does not do? And what is your competitor doing that you don't do, that maybe you should be doing? These are very important questions. And again, you won't be able to answer that, but you want to think about these things and how they relate to presentation on your website. Because your website, you have, as I said earlier, you have nanoseconds to get people to see that value. Got to see, that's the click. You got to convey that value right away. Somehow, immediately draw them in. Now, there's different ways to do that. You can publicize your white papers, you can publicize your sales, you can publicize your bulk. I have an appliance manufacturer in the audience today who's been back several times. You can do all of these tactics to drive people to your website, right? But you still want to present your values neatly, quickly, and distinctly. And you want to really find out why people don't do business with you. That's as important as why they do business with you. And who are these people? Who are these men? These women? What makes them unique to you? Are they just another consumer? Are they just another transaction? Or they're unique to you? I was talking to an architect the other day, and he said, I don't know, Jim, I understand what you're saying, but I am no different than any other architect. Those were the exact words he said to me. And I had to put my coffee down, and I said, Mike, I don't know what you're talking about. Mike, you are absolutely not, you're an architect, and that word is shared by other people, but you're not like any other architect that I've met. What are you saying? And within 15 minutes, I proved to him his unique value in the educational marketplace. And you could see as we were talking about it, not only did our relationship, deepen, but also he was realizing for the first time that all he has to do is look at his own business, how he conducts business, and he will immediately start seeing things he does that no one else does. That's differentiation. That's value. I'm telling you right now, everyone in the audience, and I don't know everyone in the audience, I only know you by the people who shared their websites, and I won't be able to cover all the websites today, that each of you has unique value. We have unique value here, and it hasn't changed in 31 years. Our value has become more difficult to explain to people. The other day I was talking to another agency in an effort to collaborate, and she said people ask her the same question they ask me, what do you do? And it's very difficult to explain what you do when you do so many different things, isn't it? Sidebar, my mom died not knowing what I do. She also used to say, Jim, what do you do? And I tried to explain to her, and then her eyes would glaze over, and I'd go on. Bless her heart. Anyway, this is not what you want to show people. If you're building your website, don't show anything like this. This is horrible. Right? I found this a few years ago. I keep it on this presentation because even if you're building your website, don't show anything goofy. Or make a promise you won't be able to fulfill. Or say, why would you come back when this website was finished? Why would you advertise a website that's not finished? Let's look at some attendees' websites. Cabinets by Design is back. They've been here a lot. I really like this site. It's been redesigned a couple of times already. And by the way, part of your understanding of your website is that you always have to look at it from a design standpoint. Not that you want to redesign it every week or every quarter, but you want to really think about what's going on in the world of website designs. So Cabinets by Design, has redesigned their website several times, and their latest one looks like this. It's very modern, very simple. It's congratulations on the redesign, but they need more pages. They needed more pages before, and they need more pages now. And they did take the advice from the last time, because if you look at the last time, this is all they had as navigation. If you look at it this time, they did add the blog, and that's what. Congratulations, that's Jim clapping. That blog, even though it hasn't been updated in a while, that blog is going to bring you dividends, but make sure it's different pages. Another person in the audience is Certified Interiors. They have 47 pages. It's a beautiful website. They've got a rolling screen, beautiful imagery, but they need more content. You're going to see a common theme in some of these websites. And I apologize I didn't get to everybody, but the common theme is you need content. This is the appliance. Don's Appliance has been back several times. Congratulations. This is when I first met Don. This is a beautiful website. You're going to say, well, Jim, it's not designed. Well, Don is not into the design business. He's in the appliance selling business. This is a great website, and he's updated it since then. It looks like this now. He's upgraded it. He's got little boxes now that people like. Makes it very easy to use and navigate. He's got a phone number going on. He's got a chat going on. And he has 2,000 pages. If you're looking for appliances where he practices his appliance trade, there's no way he's not on page 1. And he's got a great page count. He's got great SEO. He's in Pittsburgh. If you're in Pittsburgh, go to Don's. I'm kidding. Well done. Okay? This is his latest. I took a picture yesterday. And again, it's beautiful stuff. He's got a chat box going on. I'm not saying all your websites have to do what Don's doing. But Don is specifically trying to reach people, remember he's defining his audience, who are looking for appliances. That's it. He's not building tall buildings. He's not doing architectural consulting or commissioning. He's not doing any of that. He's selling appliances. What are you selling? What are you selling? He's also upped his page count. He's got 6,000 pages now. He's rocking. Thank you, Don, for attending. Coastal Property Services has 9 pages. You need more pages. You've got scrolling pictures, which is good navigation. But again, you need more pages, and testimonials do work, but you need some better SEO. You really do. Ethlin Design Build, thank you for attending. You've got 13 pages, so you need more pages. You need SEO. You got a beautiful video, a nice video, right? But clicking on some of those building types, which you encourage people to do when you scroll over, some of those clicks don't work. Some of those pictures don't work. So the secret here is to make them all work or make none of them work and build separate pages with them. I could go on, but there's too many. There's just too many. So I can do this offline with you. If you want to do that, email me. You'll get my email at the end of this. It's Jim at Interline Group, or give me a call. We'll set up a time, and I'll be happy to do a 15-minute, no charge consult and go over your website with you. So some quick checks before we go into the ins and outs. We're doing good on time. Spelling. Well, Jim, spelling doesn't matter anymore. It does too. It does too. Unconsciously it does. A misspelled word will make you look bad. Unconsciously to the people, unless they too cannot spell, which more and more people cannot spell. So this may be a thing that of the past, spelling. What others do. Watch what others are doing. Dates on your content. You want to date your content simply because sometimes it's good to date your content, so when people come to your blog, they don't see, 2009 was the last time you posted something. If you don't want to date your blogs or your content, then don't. Leave them open. Look at your load times. Load times are a determination of internet speed, but also on the tools you use to build your website. The main tool today being used is WordPress. There's others, but if you use WordPress, that's really something you have to host. If you use a thing like Wix or something else, somebody else might be able to host it. And there's pros and cons to everything. So if you're going to look at load times, if you're going to look at building a website from scratch, just go to Google and type website platforms, best website platforms. Don't read the ads, but look at some of the lists. Don't have empty pages. I can't tell you the amount of websites where you go to, page not found, because the linking isn't there, because they removed the page and forgot to take it off. Who do you want visiting you? That's the predetermination of building your website. You cannot possibly want 1 billion people, that is, to visit your website. Why would you want that? Why would anyone want that? Okay? Who do you want visiting your website? Structure the website for that person. Build it. They call those personas these days. So draw up a persona of the ideal visitor to your website. And then you can use, there's a ways to track them too with tracking mechanisms like reverse IP lookup. What do you think they are looking for when they come to your website? Did they type in content and your website showed up on page 1? What are they looking for? And as the old saying goes, give them what they want. How does your content deliver what they're looking for? Is it a video? Videos are gaining in popularity, and you should consider that. Is it beautiful pictures with content below the pictures, right? We don't want to neglect the content. And don't forget the blog. Blog is an ugly word. Call it articles, call it essays, whatever you want. It's a blog. It's content. Blog came out very early in the internet, when it was born. Let's do a blog. I've always hated that word because I'm an English major. So how does this apply to your website? Well, as I said, it's the central point of content for anything else you do, whether you're doing proposals, whether you're doing social media. All roads lead to your website. All roads must lead to your website. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you may not realize this, and you may not want to admit it, all right? But you are in competition, not just with your competitors. You're in competition with everyone else who's looking on the internet for stuff you do. And that's everywhere, right? So when well, Jim, didn't you just contradict yourself? Didn't you just say that I want to define who I want looking at my website first and then build my website for that person? I did. And I did not contradict myself. That's the person you want. But you're in competition with everybody else who wants the same person. So if you define the person properly, succinctly, and build your website to attract that person, you're going to win. And you do it by differentiating yourself. So what's next? Well, you want to start with a plan, right? Like anything else, architects start with a plan. Let's discuss the plan. What are your requirements? What are the requirements for your website? Look at what other people are doing. Ask about navigation. Ask about, testimonials. Look at the navigation others in your industry use. Others outside your industry. One of my secret weapons, which is really not a secret, is to jump channels. What I mean by that is go outside your normal channel. If you're an architect, go somewhere else. Go to the engineering websites, or go to somebody else's website that's a market segment, like the HVAC industry, or business consulting, or business consultants like Accenture. Look at what they're doing. My secret weapon is fashion websites. Fashion has always, before COVID, been on the leading edge of things. They do things very, very differently and oddly in fashion. They create trends, right, which last and then they go away as quickly as they're created. But they're doing things there that are translatable to what you're doing. How can you borrow from these ideas? How can you make yours? So build a plan for your website. And I know it's 2021. Does anyone know what this year is going to look like? Does anyone know what next year is going to look like? No one knows anything. So your guess is as good as my guess, as good as the professional guess. So when people are telling you, you must have a blog, well, take that with a grain of salt. But I'm proving it to you, and I'm going to prove it to you subsequently, that content is king. Content is how, because again, my goal is to get your website seen before you can delight, right? So in order to be seen, you have to be on page 1, and you do that technically with content. It's not hard. Pages mean being seen. The more pages you have, the more likelihood the spiders of Google find you and index you and bring you up to page 1 eventually. SEO takes a long time. You can buy a Google AdWord for architects in Detroit, let's say, for example. You can buy those words. Google will put you on page 1 instantly. But that doesn't mean people are going to click on there. Remember, organic search beats ads by far. Ghostry, G-H-O-S-T-R-Y, G-H-O-S-T-R-Y, Ghostry is the greatest ad blocker in the world. I encourage you to get it. It's free. Put it on your Chrome or your Firefox, whatever you're using, and turn it on, and you'll never see another ad unless you choose to, where you pause the blocker. That's what people are using more and more. They don't want to see ads. They want to see content. So give them content. Commanding the trend, social media as information warfare. People are using digital channels to conduct these things, which means war. This is a great blog. You should read it. It's a study, actually. It's an article by Lieutenant Pfeiffer, who talks about what happened in the 2016 election, right? Not the last election, but the pre-election, and how people used social media. Because not every... this is going to shock some of you in the audience. I know, so I apologize for that. But I'm going to shock you anyway. Everything you read on the internet is not true. Is that a shocker? Because of course you believed it, right? Define what you want. Rethink your website like you would a project from a client. Pretend you're hiring yourself. What would you do? The best clients have a clear goal of what they want, and they make sure that they keep examining it and examining it. They define what the site is, what it could be, what it should be. If you need additional input, get people around you from your company. Get outside. Ask your customers, what do you think I should be putting on my website? If you ask 10 people, you get 10 answers. Should you do all 10 of those things? Of course not. As an architect, do you put in everything your client wants? Of course not. What you do is you use your filter, which is your natural inclination, to understand the principle I'm telling you, that to be on page 1, you have to somehow overcome Google with organic search. And the only way to do that is with content. It's the only way to do that is with content. And you have to have quality design. Quality designs deserve quality design, right? You're a professional. Why would you put in, a half-baked idea on a website or something? Let's be cute. Let's feel like we have to entertain people. No, you don't. You're a professional. Be a professional. Now, Jim, of course, the idea of professional after COVID is changing. Well, of course it is. I could send you a Wall Street Journal article about what's happening to the dress code in offices because no one's going back to the office. And if they are going back to the office, they don't want to go. They don't want to get out of their pajamas. I'm kidding. But there was one CEO in the article that I could send you that actually said the only rule I gave him is don't show up with pajamas. Well, that's a pretty open book. I grew up in an era where you suit up, you wear a tie. That's a professional. I took my tie off when COVID started, but I put it back on when I go to see a client. I put it back on. They look at me very strangely, as I'm sure you're thinking about, what a strange man, he still wears a tie. Well, it's the way I was brought up. But it's easier, I'll tell you this, it's easier to take the tie off if I have it on and no one else has it on. I'll just take it off than to have everybody have a tie and you don't have a tie. You see what I'm saying? Have a professional image and avoid templated sites. There's templates you can buy. And guess what? If you build to a templated site, nothing wrong with that. But if you build to a template and your competitor has the same template, guess what? There goes differentiation by the wayside. Sorry. It has to be visual. Why? Because images are important. People are reading less and less and less. I hate to admit that, but I admit that. They're reading less and less. And why are they doing that? Because we've become a nugget society. We just give me the facts, right? Which is another story. We can talk about that. The main thing is to be visual. Use visuals to create interest, to create content. But don't just put in the picture. Remember, you have to caption the picture. You have to caption the picture. And if you're using a product that's new, check with the manufacturer about co-op hours and maybe share some of the pictures. If you hit the right picture and company at the right time, it's a real benefit for both of you. And when you use pictures, don't just put in a sample and think that computer color is the same for all computers. It gets better, but computer color is not exact color. Designers know this. You know this as designers in the audience. I can open up the microphones and you guys can argue about color on the computer screen. It's not the same as reality. So instead of using things like this, put it in context. Put that same product, that color in context of what it does to be more dynamic. And then give them applications of that product in different things. In other words, drive the content. Drive the content with the visuals. You see siding, flooring, facades, those are words, and behind those words, there's actually more words. If you click on that, you open up the page and get a whole story about how that product is used in flooring. Be creative. You know, when I looked at the attendees for this webinar, I personally was delighted with the attendance roll. Why? Because I saw a bunch of creative people. I saw designers and architects and manufacturers. I saw creative people. I was a former creative director of the 8th largest direct response agency in the country in the old days. And, I was called a creative director. And I always struggle with that word as an English major because I thought everybody was creative in one form or another. But they used to call the department the creative department, as if that department was exclusively creative. Forget the account executives, forget, everyone else. That's the department where you go for creative, which is BS. It is. And I proved it. Anyway, think about your website. The sky's the limit in creativity. You want to be creative, but you don't want to be too creative. If you're too creative and you use little tricks, right, you put people off. People move away from what you're trying to get to them, which is really explaining the content of your website, right? They move away from you. This is an example I use in this webinar. This was Geoform. It's an architectural design firm, not in this country. And when I found them in 2007, this is what they look like. In 2008, actually. Would you read this? This looks like something out of that Russell Crowe movie, A Beautiful Mind. Remember that? He was this genius. Who would go forward to the next page? They redesigned it to this a few years later. Okay? Then they redesigned it to this. This is the most recent picture I got from them in 2018. I didn't take a recent picture today because I didn't really want to know if they're still in business yet because COVID was so devastating. But this is what they moved to. So remember what I said earlier. Website design should be changed every now and then to keep up. And let's get social. Can we get social? Facebook has 1 billion active users. But wait, Jim, didn't you tell me you don't want 1 billion people? I do not. But there's nothing wrong with integrating social media to your website. When Facebook was born, right, some of the manufacturers I worked for actually said, oh, this is great. We will never need a website. We'll just put everything on Facebook. I said, that's not going to be true. How do you know that? I said, well, Facebook is a platform. It's on the internet, but it's not the internet. You're still going to need a website. No. I had one client who abandoned his website, put everything on Facebook, and then Facebook, like all platforms, including Google, like all platforms, changed their algorithms. And when they changed their algorithms, nothing worked on my client's Facebook presence on Facebook. He had to redo everything, and he punted back and actually built a website. So websites are always going to be around. This is why they're the central core of what you're doing in marketing. And quite frankly, if you do social media, always bring them back to your website. Bring them back to your website. And social media is not going away, but the channels of social media are. They're not going away, they're just changing. Remember Google Plus? That's gone. There's a lot that are gone. How about TikTok? That's a recent entry. And if you're young, TikTok is where you should be. I'm not recommending it. And look at the Instagram. Guess who owns Instagram? I'm not going to say. You can figure it out. But each person you connect to will be connected to lots of others, and maybe you get some conversation going. The graph on the bottom left is a statistic that I just pulled up for this presentation, and this is 1 second of internet activity. This is a second, not a minute like that graph I showed you before. 3.4 million emails are sent in 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what you're up against. This is what you're up against. You're up against all this noise, and somehow your website has to transcend that noise and become the point of differentiation from you. And I'm telling you right now, the only way you do that is with demonstration of your value and keep pounding the bricks and getting the message out. So you support your website with tactics. You do direct mail, you do phone, you do some advertising. Not necessarily. You do emails. You do social media. You do digital advertising. You do face-to-face. Everything you do carries your website. I remember in the, a few years ago, there were ads I would see in trade publications and there was no website address. So how is the person reading the ad going to get in touch with the person? And the reader service cards were gone. Remember the bingo cards? Your website address should be everywhere. It should be imprinted on your forehead. I'm kidding. Don't go out and get a tattoo on your forehead. But that website is the key to your business. It should support your business. I have clients now building separate rooms where they engage clients in their planning rooms. They build a section of their website, they do password protection, and they bring in and they collaborate in the room on their website. Now, why did they do that? Because Pinterest very early was being used as collaboration between interior designers and their customers. And by the way, you got to be careful of these quote-unquote platforms like Pinterest, like House, because they're in the business of same thing. They're trying to get business, right? And they're trying to take away your business, believe it or not. But that's another story. So let's recap, because I've got some questions I want to go over that people sent in. I don't see any questions in the question box. I must be hitting a home run. So please put them in there. So if I'm going to recap this, define who you are aiming at, consider your audience, and then find out your value and find out your differentiation. And that's what you tell people in your website over and over and over again. In direct mail, where I come from, they had a saying, hit them over the head, then hit them over the head again, and then again and again. Beauty soap, beauty soap, beauty soap. I don't know if you ever say. If anybody knows what I'm talking about when I say beauty soap, I want you to put it in the question box or in the chat box, and I'll send you a Starbucks card. So what am I asking? Who said, and in what movie did you hear, don't Google it, beauty soap, beauty soap, beauty soap. Thank you. Use differentiation for your website to delight your customers. Quality designs, image is everything, you are your brand, just what we were talking about. And use integrated marketing drivers. Publish a white paper, get out, do a podcast, whatever. Just get it out there. And don't forget SEO. On the right, remember we were looking at Yelp, we thought 119 million pages was a lot. Amazon has 331 million. Google has 584 million pages. I'm gasping right now for air. I need air. Isn't that amazing? Let's go for some questions. Do I have any questions? Let me look in the box first. Okay, I'm going to go to people who send in questions. Christina wants to know, how much does a website cost? Christina, I was so glad to get your question because people often ask that question. Now, in the early days of the internet, they cost $100,000. Today, you can do a website for $2,500 or $5,000, depending on the platform you use, like a WordPress, and get it done right. But remember, it's not the cost of the website that's important. What's important is your planning of the website. What are you going to use it for? How are you going to use it? Who are you targeting? That plan you create is like a database. When you build a database, right, or when you do a project, right, your planning is more important than the execution of the project itself. Because I can tell you right now, like with your projects, execution of websites always runs into the same production problems that you run into when you execute your plan. There's always variables that happen that you didn't plan for. So it's better to plan ahead of time as much as you can to get it right out of the box. That way you avoid additional costs later on. I hope I answered your question. Robert wanted to know, how long does it take to build a website? The reason, Robert, I love that question is because when you think about how long it takes to do anything, there's a couple of points of view. A true designer will tell you as long as it takes to get it right. Of course, that's a variable. I worked with a designer that said that once, and I could never understand that because it's never right. There's something always different you can improve on, right? It's never finished. But you don't want to be Leonardo da Vinci and start things and never finish them, right? So how long it takes to build a website? You can have a website built with a template in probably 24 hours. But remember, that's not what you want. You want this thought through, unless you're in a hurry to get in front of a client. When I started the business, I had a New York client. I was working out of the house. It was my 3rd or 4th year in business. I landed a big New York publisher who was coming to Chicago. I had no office. I was faced with a dilemma. What do I do? Do I bring him to the house, and show him my dining room, which is already cluttered? Or do I do what my wife was telling me to do, is get out of the house and get an office, because I was everywhere. The office was I was just everywhere. I ran and got an office right away, so by the time he got into Chicago, I had a 600 square foot office ready for bear. Today, of course, you can rent office space like that very quickly, neatly, efficiently for only a month if you need it. But when you're saying how long should you build that website, that's entirely dependent on when you need to use the website, right? I wouldn't wait too long because, as I proved to you, digital is more and more and more and more important, right? People are going digital with everything. So you should really build it on a schedule, but like your plans now that you're doing as an interior designer, if this is the deadline, you work backwards, and that's how long it will take. Arnie wanted to know, what does responsive mean? What is responsive design? Arnie, that's a great question. It really means that your website adapts to a mobile phone. Very easy to do these days. So when you build your website for a certain screen size, there's a method to that madness. You want to make sure it's responsive, so if people are pulling it up in a mobile phone, that it adjusts to the size of the phone. You understand? It adjusts to the size of the phone. That's called responsive design. Very easy to do these days. I see the question has a question here. Christy, what is the definition of a page for a website that you mentioned? How to have more pages on your website, write a lot of blogs? Great question, Christy. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your question. A page is a separate address on your website. It's got the backslash with a different address. Those are pages. If you look at what we're talking about, if you looked at, for example, our website, every page has a separate address. That's why we have 500 plus pages on our website. So you really need to chop up your website, if you only have a few pages, into multiple pages. So every blog has a separate page. Every product you're offering has a separate page. When you have team members, if you have a team member, for example, of 10 people, every team member may have his own page. He can have one page where you see the whole team, but as you click on the team member, it goes to a different page. Remember, the more pages you have, the better off you are. And the answer to the answer to write a lot of blogs is actually yes. It's actually, the answer is write a lot of blogs. You write a lot of content, and each one gets its own page. The blog topics are based on what you think people are looking for that you can do. So, and I don't know what that is, but I'd be happy to talk about you with that further, after we get done with the webinar. Here's another question from Briata. What is the advice for a startup architecture firm who is limited in content and portfolio? I am just starting. This is a great question, because it's not just you who are starting out. Now, if you're just starting out, this is my belief. You have done projects already, right, Brianna? So I would get permission from the people you did those projects for to use pictures of those projects on your website. It's very easy to do, and most of the time, if you say, I'm starting my own business and I want to showcase your product with your permission, this is the picture I'd like to show, I would use that picture on your website. They will absolutely give you. If you can't get any of the people you've worked for before or any of the projects you work for, or if you're just starting out and you have no pictures of projects finished yet, use your designs. Inspire people with your designs. As I mentioned earlier, everybody in this audience is creative. So everybody has designs. So inspire people with designs. And then as you get projects, add them into there. I'm going to show you something when I go over KB Resource, the sponsor of this, that talks about this very thing. I hope that helped. And if not, send me an email. Sherry, can you please repeat the name of the site to stop ads? Yes, pleasure. Ghostry, G-H-O-S-T-R-Y. Ghostry. It's a ghost. It's free. It's free software. You put it on any browser you have, and it'll stop and block ads. I block everything and then I pause it. Remember this too, if you do banking online, this ad blocker will stop you. It's powerful enough to stop you doing the sometimes the banking, so you want to shut it off sometimes. I hope that you'll love this ad blocker. You'll never go back. Okay, I got one more question. Time for one more. SSL, what does it stand for? Says Thomas. SSL is Secure Socket Layer. It's a protection device that websites often have on them. It's a security protocol, actually, that enables people to feel that they're secure. Because sometimes you go to a website and it says not secure. Does that mean you're going to get hammered and hacked? No. It's just a level of protection that some companies like to see on it. And it's not, does your website have to be SSL? I don't think so. We're not on Amazon or doing, unless you're doing e-commerce, and then you want that SSL. But that's another story. Listen, I've got more questions, but I'll have to wait. Send me your questions. This is the sponsor, KB Resource. If you go to their website, kbresource.com, and check them out, you'll find out they're a different type of company. They have a special section for designers called KBtivity. This is what I wanted to call your attention to as an architect and also a designer. They post these things for free. They're another way to get on board and drive people back to your website. The person I want to call your attention to is Kim Eggert. She's on the bottom there. Kim Eggert was one of many designers who designed the White House several years ago when Melania Trump was in there. And when I had met Kim and she told me this, she didn't have a website, and when she did have a website, she didn't talk about this. This is one of the most visited pages on KB Resource. The reason is that when I asked her, there were 70 designers that were called into the White House to do this. She was one of 70. And when I met Kim, she said, I'm surprised that people didn't visit my website more to find out about my wonderful work in the White House. And I said, well, did you promote it? And she goes, what do you mean? They promoted it. I said, no, they didn't promote it. They promoted the White House interior design of the 70 people, but they didn't single you out to show what you did with